Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordy and Glory video. Today we are going to be taking a look at the new Traitor, Enforcer and Traitor Guardsman squad rules that GW has just released. Now before we get into today's video, if you are interested in knowing where to get these rules, you can find them for free on the Warhammer community website, and don't worry, I'll put a link down in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive straight into today's video, and the first thing we're going to take a look at is the Traitor Enforcer squad. Now, for all intents and purposes, the Traitor Enforcer is actually a Traitor Commissar, a Chaos Commissar, which is pretty crazy. And what's really interesting about this squad is it can include a optional Traitor Ogryn bodyguard model. Now that is very interesting because right now, if you look at something similar to this in the Astra Miliatrum Codex, you've got the Commissar, who's a separate squad, and you've got the Ogryn bodyguard, who is a separate squad. But in this case, they are combined together. And the reason that's interesting is because this may hint to how GW is going to handle things like Ogryn bodyguards and command squads in the upcoming 9th edition Imperial Guard Codex. Now moving on to the stats for these units, the Traitor Enforcer has got a movement of 6, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 3, toughness 3, 4 wounds, attacks 3, leadership 8 and a save of 5+. These stats are actually incredibly similar to the Lord Commissar stats that you can get for the Imperial Guard right now, the only difference being that the Lord Commissar has a 4+ save base and leadership 9. The Traitor Ogryn has a movement of 6 as well, which means it can keep up with the Traitor Enforcer. It's got a weapon skill of 3+, ballistic skill of 4+, strength 6, toughness 5, wounds 6, attacks 5, leadership 8 and a 5+ save. Now in comparison to a Loyalist Ogryn, that is an additional pip of strength and an additional wound and an additional 2 attacks base, which is a big improvement over the current Ogryn stat line, although it still does retain a 5+ save. Now moving on to the war gear for this unit, the Traitor Enforcer has got a bolt pistol and power fist. These are fairly standard affair. The one thing I would mention is that the power fist does have a flat damage of 2, unlike the current Imperial Guard power fist, which has a damage of D3. So it's great to see that GW is beginning to roll out the standardized new profiles of those weapons across other factions and other new releases. One thing to mention is that the power fist is a -1 to hit when he's using it, which means realistically this guy is only going to be hitting on a 4+ because his weapon skill is only a 3+. I said he was similar to a Lord Commissar, but I think realistically he's basically a regular Commissar with an extra wound, and that's actually how it works out. You've then got the loadout for the Traitor Ogryn, and this guy is a bit of a beast in close combat. He's got no ranged weapon, but he does have 2 melee weapons. The first one is the Mutant Claw. Now this is strength used, which means it is strength 6, which is pretty good. It's AP -2, which is great for punching through Armor of Contempt, and it is damage flat 3, which is really good. If this guy gets a wound through, he's going to pick up almost any kind of infantry in the game. Now the thing with the Mutant Claw is it gives you an extra attack. So this guy's actually running around with 6 attacks. That is double the amount that a normal Ogryn would have, which is pretty impressive. But the thing is that he can't ever put more than 1 attack into the Mutant Claw. It's a bit like a servo arm. It gives you an extra attack, but you can only use that extra attack to really use the Mutant Claw. It's still nice to get that extra attack, and like I said, it's a real punchy one with that -2 and that flat damage 3. So I quite like the Mutant Claw. You've then got the Scavenge Maul, which is okay. It's strength +1, it's AP -1, it's flat damage 2. It basically is like a Bullgrim Maul, but the thing is, it only gives you +1 strength, but the Traitor Ogryn has an extra base strength, so it basically works out as he's got a Bullgrim Maul. Now, this weapon is okay. The one problem I have with it is the fact that it's only AP -1. Basically means that it's going to be very ineffective into anything with Armor of Contempt, but anything that isn't Armor of Contempt, this guy is going to be able to lay down some serious hurt. I mean, 5 attacks hitting on 3s, plus you've got that extra one from the Mutant Claw. Overall, I feel like this guy is going to be able to do quite a lot of damage, and combine that with the Traitor Enforcer's Power Fist, and you have, for basically a sort of human guardsman type unit, quite an effective melee punch. You've then got the abilities of the squad, and the first one is a Refractor Field. The unit's Traitor Enforce model has a 5+ invulnerable save. That's pretty good. It's always nice for a character to have an invulnerable save, even if it is only a 5+ one. It would be nice if this could benefit the Ogryn as well, but the Ogryn actually does have its own damage mitigation ability, which is Wall of Muscle. Each time an attack is allocated to this unit's Traitor Ogryn model, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack to a minimum of 1. That is really, really good. And I really hope that we see that Wall of Muscle ability get spread out to regular Ogryn and Bulgrin when the Guard 9th Edition Codex comes out. That would go a long way to making Bulgrin feel really, really tanky. Now, interestingly, we have heard rumours about Bulgrin and Ogryn getting a -1 damage ability. And seeing it here now on the Traitor Ogryn makes me think there's a good chance that rumour is going to pan out, which is fantastic. Now, another ability that I want to talk about is the Traitor Enforcer's Forward for the Dark Gods. Once per turn, when a friendly Traitor Guardsman Squad unit within 6 inches of this unit's Traitor Enforcer model fails a morale test, this unit can use this ability. If it does so until the end of the phase, each time a combat attrition test is taken for that Traitor Guardsman Squad unit, it is automatically passed. That's a really, really good ability. That is like the old Commissar rule coming back, but even better, because this time you don't even need to execute someone to get the ability. Now, interestingly, there's a slight difference between this ability and the Commissar one, which is that it's only once per turn. Now, I could be reading this incorrectly. Let me know down in the comment section below. But the way this makes me think is that you can only buff one squad a turn with Forward for the Dark Gods. So you can't do what you used to be able to do back in 8th edition with Commissars, which was take loads of infantry, surround them all around one Lord Commissar or Commissar, and he can just keep blowing the heads off multiple squads. I think the way that it works is you can only use it on one squad each turn. But you guys let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And again, I can't wait to see if this ability in some kind of capacity, maybe it'll say Forwards for the Emperor, will get passed on to the Guardsmen when their codex comes out. Now, the last ability for this squad, we're going to go back to the Traitor Ogre for a moment, and this is Big Target. Each time an attack targets this unit, if this unit contains a Traitor Ogre model, use that model's toughness characteristic when making a wound roll for that attack. Also, each time an attack is allocated to a model in this unit, if that unit contains Traitor Ogre model, that attack must be allocated to that model. And each time a mortal wound is inflicted on this unit, if it contains Traitor Ogre, that model must suffer the mortal wound. Overall, all of the parts of this ability are really solid. That first one about getting to use the Ogre's toughness is fantastic. It means that small arms fire is going to find it much more difficult to pick up your Traitor Enforcer. And when you think about it, if anyone's got some kind of sniper weapon or targeted weapon, you're just going to be able to go, well, you know what, my Traitor Ogre is going to absorb it, and his one job is to absorb damage. So I think it's a really strong ability, and it allows the squad as a whole to become a lot more durable. The one thing I would say is you can't quite play around with the wound allocation as much as you'd want to, as you can do under the current Ogre and Bodyguard rules, but overall I think this is much simpler, and I think overall it's much better. I think the big implication from this unit, and what I would really love to see taken over into the main guard book, is the ability to stack your officers and characters with other units like command squads and Ogrins. For me, it used to be so good back in the day when you had your command squad with your officer, and you could add advisors onto the squad. Astropaths weren't a separate thing, they were something you added onto the command squad. And if you really wanted to, you could take a really beefy command squad. You could take a squad that had a gunner, a flag guy, a medic, a vox guy. You could have a couple of bodyguards, you could have an astropath, a master of ordnance, a master of the fleet. All of these things could go into one command squad. And if you took a fully stacked up one, you're looking at almost a 9 or 10 man unit. It was really, really cool. So I would like to see this kind of thing that we're seeing with Traitor Ogryn come back in with the Guard. And I personally would really like to see the return of these big command squads. They're just going to look so cool on the tabletop, and it's a great way of being able to represent the way that Guard characters actually should work. We shouldn't really have individual heroes running around all over the place. That's just not very Guard. We don't have like Space Marine captains who can take on knights by themselves. That's just not how we are. How our officers and stuff should work is by supporting the men of the line. And so having a command squad, which could be made up of an officer, a commissar, an Ogre bodyguard, officer of the fleet, master of ordnance, astropath, a banner, a medic, a flamer, a company marksman, a company voxman, all this kind of stuff that could just go into this one mega command squad that might end up costing like 100, 120 points. That's fine if it's then able to really leverage loads of abilities and be protected by the fact that it would have the cat keyword. That for me would just look so cool on the tabletop and would really enforce the feel for how the guard is going to work. Imagine you're a newer player coming across this faction. Maybe you've had your time with your Necron Lords and your Space Marine Chapter Masters and all that kind of stuff, and then someone is explaining to you how the guard HQ choice, and you're like, wait, hang on, I get a squad for an HQ choice? That's totally cool, that's totally different, sign me up. So I think that would be a really cool thing if GW brought back big command squads, and I'm hoping that what we're seeing with this Traitor Ogryn and Traitor Enforcer is GW just dipping their toe into that sort of feel and see what feedback they get back from the community. Now, next up we have the Traitor Guardsman squad, and this is a very interesting unit because I think it has some big implications for what Guardsman squads are going to look like when the Miliatrum Codex comes out. And in my opinion, this does confirm several of the rumours that we've seen floating around. So firstly, let's take a look at those stats. So we've got movement 6, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 4+, strength 3, toughness 3, wounds 1, attack 1, leadership 6, a save of a 5+, and the Traitor Sergeant gets an extra attack and extra leadership, and that is it. As you would expect, the Traitor Sergeant comes with a las pistol and some kind of close combat weapon, and every Traitor Guardsman is equipped with a las gun, and everyone in the squad gets frag grenades. So there's nothing too special there. That's so far so Guardsman squad. You've just stuck a few extra spikes on it. Where things start getting interesting is in the war gear options. So up to 3 Traitor Guardsmen could each have their las guns replaced with one of the following: a flamer, a cultist grenade launcher, a melter gun, a plasma gun, or a cultist sniper rifle. Now, bear in mind, you can only take one of each of these special weapons, so you can't have a Traitor Guardsman squad with 3 melter guns or 2 plasma guns and a melter gun. It's got to be one of each, and you've got 5 choices, and you can take 3 of them. So overall, that's kind of interesting. But you know what? This starts to confirm some of the rumours that we've seen surrounding the regular guard squads, where you won't be able to take heavy weapons with your guardsman squads anymore. We're seeing it with Traitor Guard. We very well may see it with regular guard squads as well. Interestingly, GW's always had this approach of if we don't make a model for it, if it's not in the box, you won't be able to have it in your squad. Well, you know what GW did recently? They added that weapon sprue into all of the Cadian boxes. And I've been saying, well, what are they going to do? Let you take loads of special weapons in a regular Cadian squad? Well, that actually seems to be what they're thinking about doing. Because imagine if you could have the same options here. You get a 10-man squad, you can take 3 special weapons, but you've got 5 choices, but you can only take 3 of them. That's really interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But overall, it definitely would allow you to get more mobile firepower into your Cadian squad. But yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Another point to note is that the cultist sniper rifle that you can take is actually improved over the current sniper rifle that the guard can get because it has an AP of -1. Now, -1 AP isn't anything big to write home about just because of Armor of Contempt, but it's nice to see that the sniper rifle is getting a buff, and again, we should see that rolled out to other factions like the Guard as well. Moving on, we've got other war gear options. For example, one Traitor Guardsman can be equipped with the Voxcaster, and the Voxcaster works quite a bit differently to how it works for the regular Guard. Whilst the Bearer's unit is within 24 inches of a friendly Traitor Enforcer unit, the Bearer's unit is treated as being in range of that Traitor Enforcer's unit's forward for the Dark God's ability. That's a really big change. Firstly, you're seeing the fact that it's going from an 18-inch range on Voxcasters to a 24-inch range. We've actually seen something similar when it comes to the Guard secondaries. You know, Inflexible Command, you have to be within 24-inch range of a guy with a Voxcaster rather than 18-inch range. So I think this is a big tell that we're going to see Voxcasters go up to a 24-inch range. Another big change about this is that the Traitor Enforcer doesn't need to be within range of another Voxcaster. At the moment, the way Guard Voxcasters work, you've got to have your officer in range of a Voxcaster, and then he can use his ability to a squad with another Voxcaster. In this ability, it's just, if you've got a Voxcaster, you count as being within 24-inch range. Much simpler, much better, and I really hope we see that change rolled out. After this, we've got the Traitor Sergeant's loadout, and his weapons could be changed in all manner of ways. You can swap the las pistol for an auto pistol, which does exactly the same thing, but aesthetically looks a bit different. He can have a bolt pistol, he can have a plasma pistol, you can swap out the improvised blade, which just gives him an AP -1. If you play a lot of Armor of Contempt, you won't want to take that improvised blade, for a chainsword, which I would probably take, or a power sword, which I might take. You do have to pay for it, though. We'll get to that in just a moment. And then you've got the Traitor Sergeant's las pistol and improvised blade can be replaced with one bolt gun. Now, a couple of key changes here that we can see. Firstly, the Sergeant has access to more than one kind of melee weapon. That's just like a base melee weapon, so you can choose between the improvised blade and something like a chainsword. I'm not sure if we'll see that rolled out to all guard squads, but we have heard that Tanith are going to be in the main guard codex, and their straight silver blade just gives them a -1. So it might be that this improvised blade will be translated in some form, maybe regiment specific, over to the guard codex. Another interesting thing that I noticed is that you have to pay for that plasma pistol and power sword. Right now in the guard codex, or I should say data slate, you can get all of your power swords and plasma pistols for free on your guard unit, but with the Traitor Guardsman you seem to have to pay for it. I would probably expect that to come into the codex. Getting free plasma pistols and power swords and everyone is pretty crazy. A big change here that I think some people are overlooking is the fact that the Traitor Sergeant's las pistol and improvised blade can be replaced with one bolt gun. Right now in the guard codex, you just swap out your pistol and you get to take a bolt gun. And that means you keep your melee weapon. You get to keep the fact that you have a chainsword, or you can have a guy with a bolter and a power sword. But that's not the case here. So that's kind of interesting, and that would line up with some of the other changes we've seen, like Space Marines can't take bolt guns and power swords as far as I'm aware. It's just a small change. It just means in a very slight capacity, the Sergeant is getting nerfed. Now, another thing I want to talk about that might give us a few hints to what the guard codex is going to look like is the Traitor Guardsman squad is 60 points. That is the same as the current Guardsman squad, and that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like the Guard squads aren't going to go up in points too much. If we could keep them at around 60 points going into the codex, that would be fantastic. One of the concerns that I've seen in the community at the moment is that Guardsmen are going to get maybe like the Termagant treatment, where they're going to go up 2 or maybe even 3 points to represent this more elite Guard army that we keep hearing about. I really hope that isn't the case. Guard definitely need to be the Horde army of the Imperium, and if we can keep them at about 60 points or even have a few points decreases, that would be fantastic. But overall, the fact that these Traitor Guardsmen are coming in at 60 points makes me feel good about where our regular Guardsmen are going to be when the codex lands. Now, if we take a look at the Traitor Enforcer points, he actually costs 45 points, and the Traitor Ogrin costs 65 points. Now, 45 points is pretty hefty for a Commissar right now. I think Lord Commissars are only about 30, 35 points, and regular Commissars are about 15 points. They are dirt cheap. So if you were to take a Commissar and triple his points cost, because, you know, Commissar's an elite, Traitor Enforcer's an elite, you'd have to give it some pretty Gucci abilities. Now, of course, we do have to take into account the fact that the Traitor Enforcer does come with a Power Fist. That's probably adding on 10 points in the background. So if we look at this as maybe costing 35 points for a Commissar, do we think that is worth it? Well, I think the Forward for the Dark Gods ability is really, really strong. And I think that if it becomes Forward for the Emperor and basically stays the same thing, it will be a really, really good ability. And combining that with the fact that Voxcasters could interact with it, I would say that paying 35 points for a Commissar in the new guard book would be worth it. The way you've got to think about it is in two ways. Firstly, you could have your Commissar sticking around with a bunch of Ogrin or Bulgrin, a big squad of Bulgrin, not having to worry about morale is pretty important, or big 30-man blocks of conscripts if we're still seeing conscripts in the new guard book. I think that would make it a really, really strong ability. I think the big thing, though, is the fact that Voxcasters interact with it. That's what makes this guy worth 35 to 45 points, both for your Traitor Enforcers and for potentially Commissars in the main guard book. Having your Commissar being able to sit back and still give out his ability via the Voxcaster, I think it's massive. I don't think that's something that should be overlooked, and I really hope that we get something in the guard codex that's similar to it. But that's all we've got time for today. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I actually really like the Traitor Guardsman squad. I think that it's a nice, cheap squad that can come with some pretty good firepower, and it seems to be pointed appropriately. For me, I feel like GW has hit this one right on the head, and I think the Traitor Enforcer is pretty good as well. Do you want to take him with that Ogrin? You can do. That's going to make the squad much, much more durable, but it is also going to increase the cost of the squad as well. But it's good that they've given you the option. You can take the Enforcer, but you can pick to take the Traitor Ogrin. Overall, again, I think they've just nailed it with that Traitor Enforcer. I think his abilities are just strong enough. I think his options are just flexible enough, and overall I just think both of these units that GW have shown off are just right exactly where they should be in terms of power, balance and points. Now, I will be doing another video in the future where I talk about how you can try and put together a full Lost and the Damned Traitor Guard army using these units and some of the other ones that are available to the Chaos Forces. And if you like the sound of that video and other ones that I'm going to be doing around the Traitor Guard, then please consider subscribing to the channel to make sure you never miss an episode. If you've enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like. It really does boost things with the almighty YouTube algorithm. And if you've really enjoyed today's video and you want to go the extra mile and support me, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. It is thanks to my channel members and my patrons that I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time now, which is just amazing to me, and I am really, really grateful to all of my channel members and Patreon. And I just want to take a moment to do a big shout out to all of the latest people who have signed up to the Mordian Glory channel. So a big thank you to Dakota, Stephen Payne, Fick Dick Google, J.A. Burnside, Simon Harris, Jonathan Akel, and James Burrell. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you doing your part. I also want to do a shout out to the latest Patreon supporters as well. Moon Prune, 700th Black Templar, Waiting for Something to Happen, Nick Hooper, Leo King Art, and Alex Hines. Thank you guys. Your ongoing Patreon support is really, really helpful and massively supports this channel. And last but certainly not least, I want to take a moment to do a personal, heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the people that have truly gone above and beyond the Call of Duty when it comes to supporting my channel. So a massive thank you and an 07 down in the comment section for Navy Veteran, Philip French, Ross Miller, Tequal, Alex Stengal, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Sawfish Trombone, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and of course, Sly Varney. Massive thank you to all of you guys. Your ongoing support it's life-changing, quite frankly, guys. So thank you so much. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.